usually, if you notice anything different, usually I'm in a sit down position, just kind of talking like that. But this evening, I kind of wanted to be walking around about this because there's a lot to unpack here, and it's really, in one sense, I get it because things change and you have to roll with the punches because it's going to change no matter what. College football is changing right now, whether we want it to or not. It's changing. That's a fact. We can't do anything about it. But it really is sad to see, what we once knew as college football kind of fading away. And a lot of things go into this. Y'all know I've made a lot of videos about conference realignment, and here recently it's been Pac-12. Pac-12's been on the board, and we've heard so many different things, so many different twists and turns, so many different scenarios, situations, whatever you want to call it. A lot of things going on right now. And as each day goes by, it just seems like it's getting worse for the Pac-12. I'm hoping, a lot of people think that because I'm doing all these videos about, the downfall of the Pac-12 and, this is bad and that's bad, that I'm against the Pac-12. That's completely false. I've always liked the Pac-12. I really have. I've always liked the Pac-12. I can remember when I was, I believe, 9, whenever Washington won their national championship in the early 90s. And I remember I was just about to graduate high school, or I had just graduated high school whenever USC was dominating college football. So I have a place in my heart for the Pac-12, and I'm hoping that they survive this. And in a sense, I do think that the Pac-12 survives this, but I don't think that they survive it from how we know it. In other words, it's going to look completely different. I think it's going to be a backfield Pac-12 as far as the Pac-12 actually surviving. I think USC and UCLA was the beginning, unless things drastically, and when I say drastically, I'm talking get flipped upside down on its head. Unless things do a complete 180, and George Kliavkoff can pull this one out of the fire, I do see some teams jumping. And the sad thing about that is, and I did a video on it today, the rivalries that could potentially get split up. And, these rivalries, they can still get played out of conference. I mean, we see Clemson, South Carolina, we see Louisville, Kentucky, Georgia, Georgia Tech. I mean, there's a lot of out-of-conference rivalry games, but at the same time, we also saw a lot of rivalries die as far as them being played every year whenever, this conference realignment stuff started. West Virginia, the team that I'm a fan of, we've experienced that firsthand. We have not played Pitt for the last 10 years or more, over a decade. This past year was the first time we played Pitt in over a decade, and that's sad. It shouldn't be like that. Same thing with Virginia Tech, and I know we got to play them like in 2017, 2018 in Washington, D.C. in a neutral site game, and that was cool. But there's nothing like a hostile road environment for a rivalry game. That's really what makes rivalry games, is that hostile road environment can, as bad as 2007 is to me, as an average college football fan, if I wasn't a West Virginia fan, I probably would have liked it, because that was a Pitt team that was not going to a bowl. Everybody did not give them a chance. West Virginia was trying to get back to the national championship since 1988. A lot of storylines going into that, and Pitt made West Virginia play the game the way Pitt wanted it to be played. And that's exactly what happened. And then, of course, Pitt broke our hearts and won 13-9. As a West Virginia fan, that sucks. But if I was not a West Virginia fan and I was on the outside looking in, that'd be a great game. That'd be like, man, that would suck for West Virginia fans. And that's something that Pitt will always brag about. And trust me, they will always brag about that, for sure. And I'm sure whoever you're a fan of, whatever rivalry it's a part of, you have those memories. Oh man, I remember that game. Remember whenever that game happened and this and that happened? And remember whenever we weren't supposed to win that game, but we went on the road and whooped them, and nobody thought it was going to happen. We all have those memories of our team in that rivalry in crazy games that we will remember forever. I will say, I understand these networks trying to get the best matchups possible to make the most money. I understand that, but at the expense of these rivalry games not, or possibly, potentially not being played every year, that's a big price. That's a big price. I wish there was a way to where they could do this, but still keep the rivalries. Unfortunately, whenever you're picking up these teams, usually there's one side of the rivalry that's very, very valuable, and then the other side of the rivalry, not so much. I mean, look at Washington, Washington State, Oregon, Oregon State. Washington and Oregon, right now, they're keeping the Pac-12 together. They are two premier brands, and if you compare the Pac-12 to the Big 12, the Pac-12 actually has better brands as far as at the top. The Big 12 doesn't have any brands that can compete as far as value goes to Oregon and Washington. Those two brands are better than any brands that the Big 12 has. So they're super valuable. The Big 10 will eventually get them. I know the Big 10 wants them, but right now they're in a flux situation. They're trying to get a new conference commissioner in. They're going to want to nail that down. And they're probably going to want to get Washington and Oregon at a low price. In other words, reduce revenue share. And that's nothing new. There's precedent for that. Nebraska, Rutgers, Maryland, all three of those teams had to do that with the Big 10. So it's not like, oh man, they just, they're punishing Oregon and Washington. No. That's normal. Now, they didn't do that to USC and UCLA, to my knowledge, but that's the LA TV market. I mean, that's a big deal. That's a lot of value. So that's nothing new. It's not, I don't see that happening. That's never happened before. Yes, it has. It has happened. So whenever that happens, the Big Ten would have no interest in Washington State and Oregon State. They wouldn't. Because they don't have the value that Oregon and Washington has. Now, maybe they could work out a legislation that forces the rivalry to continue every year. That's an option. I know that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, they have something like that going on. I think, I'll have to double check, but from what I've seen, I believe that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State have some type of legislation that requires Oklahoma and Oklahoma State to play each other every year. At first, I thought it was a legislation that kept them together. In other words, wherever Oklahoma was, Oklahoma State had to be, and wherever Oklahoma State was, Oklahoma had to be. But that's not it. It's basically they have to play each other every year. So maybe they can do something like that. Otherwise, there's a real chance that these teams might go through very long stretches of not playing each other. And I can tell you, as a West Virginia fan, it's tough to get used to. It's one of those things where you think you know how much you would miss it, but you really don't know how much you would miss it until it's actually not there. And it takes some adjusting. And, that, I don't know, 11, 12 year gap between where West Virginia and Pitt played each other, a.k.a. the backyard brawl, you get used to, as a West Virginia fan, you get used to the Big 12 grind and these weird out of conferences, and you get used to it. But then, we scheduled Pitt, and it's like Christmas. When I found out that West Virginia was playing Pitt, I'm like, I'm going. Because I had never been to the backyard brawl. Okay, I just turned 40 years old, and you're like, Golden Blue, you're 40. Why have you never been to the backyard brawl? Well, we grew up not poor, but not wealthy enough to go to football games whenever we want. And that's a trip to Morgantown. And then by the time, I had a good job to where I could do stuff like that, they weren't playing anymore. So this was the first time where the financial situation was good and the backyard brawl was being played, and it came together, and I was able to see my first backyard brawl. West Virginia lost. That sucked, but it met expectations. The atmosphere, the game, even afterwards, as bad as it sucked, like just the trash talk afterwards. I mean, you talk about trash talk when your rival beats you, especially in their house. It gets heated. I'm surprised that there weren't any fights. There weren't any fights. Got to shout out the crowd at the backyard brawl last year. There weren't any fights. But other than that, it met all my expectations. So it's really tough to see rivalries go away. I'm hoping they can figure something out. Otherwise, it's going to be sad for some of these teams. It really is. You know what? Forgot to ask everybody to please hit the like button. That really helps these videos, even the live shows, all the videos we do. When you hit that like button, it tells YouTube, hey, I like this video. Please suggest it. So it hits the YouTube algorithm. More people see it, and they click on it, and that's how we grow our audience. So you're not just helping me, but you're also helping you because you're growing the audience. So there's more trash talk back and forth. Also, if you have a question, comment, or a correction, maybe I said something wrong, either here in the live show or in a video. A lot of people like to correct me, and you want everybody to see it, and you want me to address it. Just hit that super chat button. It's a little dollar sign that you see on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Anything that you put in that super chat is going to go on the screen right there where you see Golden Bluted, and I will read it, and I will thank you, of course, and we always appreciate those donations. It's a great way to support the channel, and we always appreciate the donations. That's what keeps us going. This is my job. This is what I do 24/7, and some people like me, some people don't. I'm here to entertain, and I've been very open about that. I learned my lesson about predictions when it comes to conference realignment. I'll still do preseason predictions, but conference realignment, I thought I had a surefire source with the ACC thing. I'm talking about individuals, and Joey knows their actual name, but I'm talking about individuals that are on coaching staffs within the ACC that were telling me, Golden Blue Dude, I'm telling you, West Virginia and Notre Dame is going to the ACC, and I took it and I ran it and I promoted it as a prediction. I even gave a date because he said 2 weeks. Well, that 2 weeks went on. Oh, it's been pushed. That passed by, and that passed by, and that passed by, and it never happened. And I learned my lesson because there's no such thing as a sure thing until it actually happens. So as good of a source as you think you may have, until what they say is going to happen actually happens, then you just never know, because crazy things happen. So no more predictions. It's all speculation and hearsay. But I will say this. The information that I'm seeing and that I'm hearing has been pretty consistent as far as the direction the Pac-12 is taking. And, of course, yesterday I talked about ESPN coming out and saying we're not even close to having a deal with the PAC. And that's bad. That's really bad. The Pac-12, even if they want to go streaming heavy, they still need ESPN. Linear cable is still the main way that people watch college football. So they, even if it's just for, tier 2, tier 3, whatever, at least it's some games, Pac-12 After Dark, it's some games on linear cable for TV exposure for the national audience. So if ESPN and the Pac-12 can't close that gap, it's not good. And I don't see these bigger brands sticking around in the Pac. Maybe they surprise me, all right? That's why I'm saying this is speculation as far as actually saying, hey, this team's going to go there, and this team's going to go, here, there, everywhere. You don't know. I don't know what they're actually thinking. I don't know these conversations that are going on behind closed doors. Nobody knows that. But to me, it seems like a brand like Washington, a brand like Oregon, a brand like Utah, Colorado. As bad as Colorado's been in football, they have a decent following. I mean, they went 1-11 last year, and they still almost packed out every single home game last year. So they have strong fan support from their fans. A brand like Arizona, I don't know. I just don't see those brands being like, okay, we'll go streaming only, and we'll hope that our fans, have Amazon Prime Video or Apple TV, or if they don't, that they will buy it. Because it's a twofold problem for them. Number one, you're not on cable, so your exposure is not as big. On top of that, you're hoping Pac-12 fans love Pac-12 football or Pac-12 sports enough to where they pay a subscription fee, for Apple TV and Amazon Prime. That's a big gamble. That is a big gamble. Think about it this way. If you're Oregon and Washington, even if it's a reduced revenue contract from the Big Ten, you know you're going to have Fox and all the other networks that they have over there. You know it. You know it. And then there's the Pac-12, where you're going to make less and less people are going to see your brand. How is that not going to affect recruiting? People are not thinking about that part right there. What's going to be going through the minds of players that's like, wait a minute, nobody's going to be watching us, or our audience is going to be bottlenecked or shrunk? I don't see how that wouldn't affect recruiting. I really don't. And I know the NIL pays is a major part of that. I understand that. And that goes back into, the TV deal. It's not going to be that great. So it's a double whammy whenever it comes to what the Pac-12 is looking at right now. And I just can't see any way where that doesn't affect recruiting negatively. I mean, it has to, right? Common sense, right? I mean, maybe I'm way off. I don't know. But I think that's common sense. Hero75, thank you for the $5 donation, says, sadly, old rivalries may die, but with luck, new rivalries will be born. That's actually a good way to spin that. I like that. OSU versus Oregon every year, maybe. What are some other possible new rivals? Oh, Ohio State and Oregon. That would be a great new rivalry. I like it. Yes, and that's what I was saying at the beginning of the show. I understand that these networks want the best matchups possible, and I do too. I'd want to see Oregon and Ohio State a lot, consistently, but you also want to see those bitter rivals play. I mean, there's way more emotion in those rivalries. There's a lot more at stake, but I understand what you're saying, and I actually think on that and see what kind of rivalries. Like, I like Oregon, Ohio State. That's a no-brainer. Michigan and Washington, that could be something right there. I like Michigan, Washington. That could be something. Let's see. Well, we already know that USC and UCLA are going to the Big Ten, right? USC and Ohio State, USC and Michigan, USC and Penn State. I like it. I do. I mean, to your point, Hero, there are some good matchups out there. Larry Pilgrim, thank you for the $2 donation, says, hearing possible piecemeal to linear networks. Yeah, that's the thing. Man, why does that keep wiggling when I touch that? Hold on, give me a second, guys. I'm trying to see. The problem is I left my tripod over at my brother's house whenever I did that live show for March Madness. So I'm trying to have to rig everything. So bear with me. It's a little wiggly whenever I touch the screen, but it'll be all right. But what I'm hearing is that ESPN was a part of the deal, but it was too low. I was hearing that the deal that they were looking at, that was including ESPN, was going to be $280 million, which was going to be about $28 million per team per year, and that's not counting the two new members or more with San Diego State and SMU, and they turned it down. That's how bad things are getting in the Pac-12. So, and it makes sense when you think about it, because we heard that ESPN says we're not close to a deal. So what it seems like is ESPN was like, here's the deal, and it was lowball, $28 million a year, combining everything, and the Pac-12 was like, no, and ESPN is like, we're not backing off of this. Like, we know we can get you at a low price, and if not, we know that you might bolt, and we'll get you anyways. So they have nothing to lose. And these teams don't have any leverage. They're in a position where they don't have any leverage. There is no competition right now. Fox bailed out. They're gone. ESPN knows they're the only show in town. CBS, they're not biting. NBC's got their hands tied up. In fact, NBC's looking at the NBA for a possible deal over there. So it's ESPN or nothing, and ESPN knows it. They know it. Joey Foster, great worker over here at Golden Blue, for the $2 Nation, buddy, says, congrats to Kenny, our newest GBD member. Yeah, we've actually been gaining some members. I didn't see any. Was that on? Why is that wiggling so much? I hate that. Was that on this show? Because I did not see that pop up. If it did, and no, I'm not seeing it. Sometimes it does that. I don't know why. Yeah, here recently, but we've actually been gaining quite a few members on Golden Blue, and we'll do some members only videos as well. I've just been swamped recently with the Pac-12 videos, and I put out a poll in my Patreon page on what video people want me to do. And one of the videos is the letdowns and the surprises of the first 2 rounds of March Madness. I meant to do that today, and then there was some other stuff that came out in the Pac-12. So I'm on it. I got you. I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to look through the first 2 rounds, give you my surprises, and then the big time letdowns. And Purdue is probably at the top of the list, and then Kansas is probably right below them. 2 heavyweights that went down. Probably shouldn't have too. Pitt, my gosh, bless their heart. They lose to double-digit seeded teams every year. Last year it was in the second round to 15 seed St. Peter's. They bounced back, get a number 1 seed this year. What happens? They lose in the first round to a 16 seed. Only the second time in history. That's got to suck. Anyways, I also wanted to get wanted to give you guys a better shot of, let me put this on here, of the helmets. I know the subscriber count's kind of in the way, but so we're going to have to extend all the way to that wall and all the way to that door, because we now have 75 mini helmets, and whenever we built the shelf, and I know there's a sag, we're going to reinforce it. It's going to look great. We're going to put some backing on it so the LED lights will pop even better. Tax money is going to hit any second now, so we'll get that underway. Whenever I built that shelf, it was only meant to hold 40 helmets, and whenever we built it, I had like 32, and I thought it would take longer. Now we're sitting here at 75, and I'm sticking mini helmets all over the place. I've run out of room, so we're gonna have to do, it's turned into a necessity. That's a good problem to have, and I appreciate everybody that's sending in mini helmets. And I know that we have an Auburn mini helmet coming, and we also have an Iowa mini helmet coming. So 2 bigger brands also going to be represented. Very happy about that. Georgia's still not represented. Let's see. Florida's still not represented. Nebraska. There's still a few big brands out there that's not represented, so we'll see what happens. Anyways, for the Pac-12, the bottom line is it's not looking good. As far as the conference itself, now, the teams within a conference, they can have a landing spot. It's not all bad news. Like, if you're an Oregon fan, it's not necessarily bad news that the Pac-12 could be crumbling, because I think Oregon's going to be headed to the Big Ten. Same with Washington. And I understand that these other teams, Utah's been very, very vocal. They don't want to go to the Big 12. So it might be like, man, we really don't want to go to the Big 12. So we really hope that the Pac-12 stays together. But if it doesn't stay together, you still have a landing spot. And if you look at the matchups in the Big 12, I think Utah football would get better exposure in the Big 12. I think they would have much more exciting matchups. I actually like the prospect of Utah versus Kansas State. It seems like that makes sense. It seems like it already should be that way. Or Utah versus Oklahoma State. Doesn't that make sense to you? Utah versus Texas Tech. And then there's Colorado. Colorado came from the Big 12 over to the Pac-12. And if you look at Colorado before they got to the Pac-12 and Colorado after they've been to the Pac-12, it's night and day. It's almost like going to the Pac-12 hurt Colorado football. All the matchups, well, not all the matchups, but most of the matchups are still there in the Big 12. And the regional aspect of it, the travel aspect of it, makes a lot of sense. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. And I think it would make a ton of sense for Utah, Colorado, and the Arizona schools, aka the Four Corner schools, it would make a lot of sense for them to go to the Big 12. Larry Pilgrim, thank you for the $5 donation, says, heard Pac-12 should do what MLS does. Apple gives, Pepsi, yeah, you got to burp sometimes. Apple gives games to Fox to air at no cost. FS1 After Dark, anyone? Or FS1 After Dark, anyone? Question, sorry, I read that wrong. FS1 After Dark, anyone? Apple does it with Fox for MLS. Yes, that is true. And that's what I'm saying. Maybe they can work out something like that. But how much money are they going to make off these deals? And how much are the production costs going to factor in? Because even though in that particular situation it might not cost any money, it does cost money for the other productions when you're going streaming. So the biggest question is the money. And the biggest question is it going to be enough money to keep everybody happy? That's the biggest thing. And then what I talked about earlier, streaming heavy, I was a little leery on that because here's the thing. I do think that streaming is the future of college football. I do. But we're not quite there yet. So I'm not sure if they're going to get the exposure that they want. So streaming heavy, I was like, not sure, but maybe they could survive on that. But if this is a streaming only deal, that's the part where I'm like, I really don't like that. I really don't like that. And I know that the playoff expansion is coming soon. And if the Pac-12 stays together, they're going to be guaranteed a spot in the new playoff expansion because the top 6 champions get an automatic bid. And then the top 4 champions get a bye week. So if the Pac-12 can stay together, they're going to make the playoffs. But with the lack of TV exposure, could these high-caliber recruits lose even more interest than what they already have? Now, Coach Prime is doing all right. And to be honest with you, I don't think Coach Prime took a job at Colorado to coach football games that's not going to have a national audience at least, a couple of times a year. That's not why he signed up. I think, now this is just my opinion and my theory. I don't have any way to prove this. I am upfront about this, all right? This is my take, my theory, my guess. How about that? My guess is this, because if you really think about it, before Deion Sanders took that coaching job at Colorado, he was not on anybody's radar to take that job. None. Whenever it was announced that Colorado was hiring Deion Sanders, everybody was like, what? I mean, even myself, the farthest west that I saw Deion going was Alabama, because I know he's a southeastern guy. I mean, anything in Georgia, anything in Florida, definitely. Alabama, maybe Mississippi, Louisiana, definitely pushing it, but Colorado, no, come on, that doesn't make any sense. But what could have happened was Colorado's like, look, Deion, buddy, Pac-12, it doesn't look good for the Pac-12, all right? But we know that the Big 12 is interested in us. We can have a good landing spot in the Big 12. And the Big 12 has a great TV deal with Fox. They have big noon kickoff. They have some primetime games. And then we're going to have a better TV deal. So not only can we afford to pay you this now, but in the future, we can afford to pay you even more. I just don't see Deion Sanders taking that job with the Pac-12's future in doubt, because you got to remember, there were a lot of teams without a coach, high-caliber teams like Auburn, Wisconsin, Nebraska. There were several high-caliber teams that did not have a coach that would have wanted Deion Sanders. But he landed at Colorado. So I think Colorado already knew something was up, and that's how they reeled in Deion Sanders. Now, maybe I'm way wrong. Maybe that didn't happen at all. maybe Deion Sanders is okay at coaching at Colorado and, risking the exposure of the Pac-12 after dark and not having that big of an audience. Don't know. So it's anyone's guess. I'm just trying. My philosophy is I try to make sense of things. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm trying to make sense of things. And in my simple mind, Deion Sanders going to the Big 12, or not the Big 12, Colorado, didn't make any sense unless ... something else was going on. T-Duck says worst case is 220 million, 220 million. Best case is 350 million. Oh, 350 million. I would say best case for the Pac-12 would be 300 million. I think if they can get things together and get ESPN back on track and get them to bump that up a little bit, I think they could pull 30 million a year. Now, like I said on the video I made earlier today, I think it was today. One of my friends, he's not a close friend because we don't really live very close, but we've talked about this a lot, so I consider him a friend. And of course, Joey knows. He definitely disagrees with me on this situation. 100% disagrees with me as far as the Pac-12 possibly getting picked apart. And like I said on the video, we had this conversation, and he was telling me that he heard from an Arizona source that the Pac-12 actually has a good deal, that they were offered in combination of ESPN, Amazon, and Apple TV. The Pac-12 was offered $380 million a year for the 10 teams. That would be $38 million. On top of that, I'm already going like, what? $380 million? I don't see it, but I'm listening. So on top of that, he says, and all the teams agree to shell out $5 million apiece to bring in San Diego State and SMU. So that brings the 10 teams that are already in the Pac-12, it brings their revenue down to $33 million a year, and San Diego State and SMU making $25 million a year. That doesn't make sense to me. If it's true, okay, if it's true that they're getting offered $380 million, which would be $38 million apiece, why would they voluntarily give up $5 million apiece to bring in San Diego State and SMU? Why would they do that? And I'm not saying it's not true. Maybe it is. Like I said, I don't know what actually is going to happen. I just tell you what I'm hearing, and then I try to make sense out of it. So that's the part that, first off, I just don't see the Pac-12 pulling out a $380 million deal, even with just 10 teams or 12 teams, whatever the amount is. 380, I don't see that. I really don't. Not in the situation that they're in. Now, if they would have gotten in the ball game right when the Big 12 did, or before the Big 12 did, and tried to get a TV deal before the Big 12, then I could understand it. You'd have a bidding war. All the other conferences are locked down. The Pac-12 does not have any leverage. None. They don't have any leverage whatsoever. So I don't understand how the Pac-12 would be able to reel in a deal where the teams would be making more than the Big 12 teams. That's the part that I'm really, really confused on. And then on top of that, you add on to that, what's even more confusing is when he's saying that the 10 teams that are already in the Pac-12 are voluntarily shelling out $5 million apiece to bring in San Diego State and SMU, and they're going to make $25 million apiece. I'm just like, I don't see it. Maybe it's true. Maybe that's exactly what's happening. So let's play devil's advocate, all right? Let's say that is happening, all right? Just for the sake of argument. Let's say the Pac-12 is getting a $380 million deal per year. So all the teams, 38 million, and out of the generosity of their hearts, each one of them is shelling out 5 million. Combine that together, and San Diego State, SMU, they're coming into the Pac-12, and they're going to make 25 million apiece. All right, let's say that's true. So is 33 million enough for Oregon and Washington to stay in the Pac-12? It might be enough to keep the four corners in the Pac-12. I would agree with that because, honestly, especially for Utah and Arizona State, the Big 12 is a last resort. They do not want to go there unless the Pac-12 is actually, like, literally falling off a cliff. They don't want to do it. It's an option, but they don't want that option. So I could see 33 million being enough for Utah and Arizona State. What about Arizona and Colorado? The two teams that people say are having the highest likelihood of jumping first. Is that enough for those two teams to stay? I mean, it is a little more than the Big 12, right? So you would think so. So those teams would stay, right? But then there's Oregon and Washington. Is it enough for those two teams to stay? And going past that, is it enough for Oregon and Washington not only to stay, but to sign an extended grant of rights? Okay, it's one thing to have a TV deal. It is a whole completely other ballgame if you can get teams to sign a grant of rights. And then it's an extra ballgame, extra innings, if you can get them to sign an extended grant of rights. Because from what I'm hearing, Oregon and Washington want to keep their options open, and they don't want to sign a grant of rights that's past 3 years. What if the Pac-12 is like, well, you either sign, a 10-year grant of rights or, you're not going to be included. Then you have to take into consideration that the Big 12 said, hey, we would bring you in and give you an out clause. You can leave whenever you want, go to the Big 10, and you don't have to pay anything. So then Oregon and Washington are like, so our options are, yes, 33 million is decent money, but the Pac-12 wants us to sign a 10-year deal. We're pretty sure that the Big 10 wants us before then, but we don't want to have to pay a lot of money to get out of the Pac-12 to get into the Big 10. So we really don't want to sign that. The Big 12 said that if we signed with them, that they would give us an out clause, and if the Big 10 comes calling, we can leave for the Big 10, and there's no fee. Now, I know that's like, well, why would the Big 12 do that? I mean, that really doesn't help. They can leave whenever they want. Well, number one, they can take advantage of Oregon and Washington's brand for 2-3 years, however long they stay in there, and it doesn't matter where Oregon and Washington go to, even if it's to the Big 12 for a stepping stone and then on to the Big 10, that destabilizes the Pac-12. Because right now, Oregon and Washington, they're the glue. Right now, the Pac-12 is hoping that Oregon and Washington sign an extended grant of rights. That is what the Pac-12 is hoping for. Because they know whenever Oregon and Washington leave, if and when that happens, all bets are off. All bets are off. And the Big 12 knows that. So they know, hey, even though we would be letting Oregon and Washington get off scot-free, and maybe it doesn't benefit us all that much just to have them for 2 or 3 years, what it does do is it destabilizes the Pac-12. Then these other teams are shaken up, and they're like, man, this conference is really looking bad. And now these other members are now more likely to leave. Sometimes you got to shake things up and rattle people and be like, whoa, what's going on? Because people get used to where they're at. Most people don't like change. Sometimes you literally have to force people into change. I mean, this YouTube channel itself, I could have started this thing 10 years prior, but I was scared of failure. Oh, what if I mess up? What if I stammer and stutter? What if I fall on my face? Blah, blah, blah. All the what ifs, right? My brothers were like, listen, and they showed me all these channels. They're like, look, these are just football fans that speak their mind, and
just put their personality into it. And I'm like, okay, all right, all right. So it literally took my brother saying, listen, we know you're going to suck. We know you're going to mess up, but that's part of it. The sooner you suck and the sooner you mess up, the sooner you can learn from it. And that's exactly what happened, because people get into their groove, and taking a step and change is tough. And sometimes you got to shake things up. That might be the case for the Pac-12. These teams aren't really like, oh man, the Pac-12, the future of the Pac-12 is not looking great, but we've been here so long, we like it here, we really don't want to move, and it just takes something major to happen. First off, USC and UCLA leaving, that's a big shakeup, and then the next one would be Oregon and Washington leaving. I think if that happens, then teams would be shook up enough to where they're like, yeah, okay, it's time to get out of here. This is bad. Hero 75, thank you for the $5 donation, says, I think the Big Ten wants Utah, but they want some ACC teams first. So unless Utah sells themselves dirt cheap, the Big Ten will wait until ACC breaks up. That's actually a fair argument. That's a fair statement. Does the Big Ten want the ACC teams enough to where they're willing to wait till 2036? And I know there's still that possibility of enough majority teams coming together to kind of destabilize the grant of rights, and they can get out that way. But with the ACC right now, there is no guarantee. With the Pac-12, they have 1 year left, and that's it. So the Big Ten could take Washington and Oregon right now if they wanted to. Easy. So how much faith do they have in the ACC destabilizing before 2036? And if they don't think that the ACC is going to destabilize before then, are they okay at 16 members until 2036? Because I'm telling you, Washington and Oregon combined with USC and UCLA, that'd make a lot of money for the Big Ten. A lot of money. It would make a ton of sense, especially for travel for those West Coast teams. And I don't think that USC and UCLA join in. One of my commenters said this, or subscribers said this. I don't think USC and UCLA join the Big Ten just so they can be on an island. I mean, West Virginia fans, we think that travel is a nightmare. It's going to be way worse, way worse for USC and UCLA. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be Oregon and Washington. It could be the other two California schools. I'm telling you, you cannot forget about Stanford and Cal. And I know Stanford and Cal does not bring as much as Oregon and Washington when it comes to football brand, but I'm telling you, when it comes to academics and research and all that other stuff, they are the cream of the crop. And you know what? This is a good video idea right here. I haven't thought of this. Now, I've done a video on the potential of Stanford and Cal going to the Big Ten, but I never thought of it this way, what I'm about to say. So, we keep hearing from Utah, right? Utah's come out and said, we do not want to go to the Big 12. We think that if we go to the Big 12, that's going to hurt our academics. It's going to hurt our research funding. It's going to hurt a lot of stuff on that side of things, right? And so I've talked to people. I'm like, how does this work? Why does being in the Pac-12 help your research revenue versus being in the Big 12? I thought it was about the university, not the conference. Well, the feedback that I'm getting is the affiliation with Stanford and Cal. So, another shakeup move that could be even worse, more detrimental than Oregon and Washington going to the Big Ten, could be Stanford and Cal going to the Big Ten. Let's say the Big Ten wants Stanford and Cal for their academics research, because you got to remember the Big Ten is sort of a Commonwealth conference. Everybody gets access to everybody's sources and all that stuff. So it's like, you share all your resources together. It's a Commonwealth conference, all right? So let's say they pick up Stanford and Cal next, right? Well, number one, that makes sense for USC and UCLA. Travel. 2 more California schools. Oregon and Washington, they would help, yes. But Stanford and Cal, they would help even more. And they would help on the academics and research type of things. big time value in Stanford and Cal when it comes to that. I mean, they are the elite, cream of the crop. So if Stanford and Cal were to go to the Big Ten, then these teams couldn't use that argument of affiliation as far as it could hurt our academics if we move from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, because the Pac-12 would no longer have the elite academics, research, endowments, grants of Stanford and Cal. And then what does Utah say? Whoa, now Cal and Stanford is gone, so our affiliation with them is over with anyways. We're going to make more money in the Big 12. Travel actually makes more sense in the Big 12. Then there's no excuse at all. So, honestly, maybe it would actually hurt the Pac-12 more if Stanford and Cal went to the Big Ten instead of Washington and Oregon because of the affiliation. Now, on the football side of things, it definitely wouldn't hurt as much. And maybe they could still get a decent TV deal because Oregon and Washington are still in there. But they wouldn't be able to use the excuse of academics because Stanford and Cal, they would be gone. I mean, Stanford and Cal, they are the epicenter whenever you're talking about the academic side of things, the research side of things, the grants, the endowments, all that stuff. The income that these universities make, they are the epicenter. And just being associated or affiliated with Stanford and Cal, that does raise your credibility. It does. So, that could be a bigger blow than Oregon and Washington. Haven't really thought about that. Yeah, the Big Ten doesn't have a commissioner yet. That's why I did a video on April. April is when they're expected to hire a new Big Ten commissioner, and then a lot of people think that talks between the Big Ten and Oregon and Washington, that's when they're really going to accelerate. So, yes, I have covered that. Hero75, thank you for the $5 donation, says, what I mean is that Big Ten takes Oregon, Washington, Cal, and Stanford, woof, yikes, and sit at 20 and wait to see if the ACC falls before considering Utah. Okay, I got you. Yes. Now, that would be worst case scenario for the Pac-12. That would be that would be it. That would be nail in the coffin, because you're taking the two best athletics brand in Oregon and Washington, and on top of that, you're taking the two best academics research brands in Cal and Stanford. If the Big Ten, if the Big Ten were able to get those four teams, I don't see the rest. If these other teams have offers from other conferences, I see them going. I don't see any way that these teams stay if the Big Ten grabs those four. That would be the gut punch. That would be the knockout blow for the Pac-12 right there. And they could set on 20 teams, and that would actually put pressure on the SEC to expand, because these two conferences, the big boys, Big Ten, SEC, they don't want the other one to outdo them. Usually when one makes a move, the other makes a move. They're trying to stay at par with each other. So, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, if they make the jump to 20 members, I think that we could see the SEC make some moves as well. And the two teams that I think would be first on the board, if the ACC isn't available, would be West Virginia and Oklahoma State. I know, people laugh at me whenever I say that, but even the first go-around, before they got Oklahoma and Texas, and I've said this many, many times, the SEC was considering Texas A&M and either Missouri or West Virginia. The SEC was leaning towards Texas A&M and West Virginia, and ESPN was like, no, we want the Kansas City and St. Louis TV market, so go get Missouri, and that's when they got Missouri. So then we could be looking at the SEC trying to get some Big 12 teams, and Oklahoma and West Virginia would be the top two out of the Big 12 as far as SEC consideration. Then after that, you could see maybe two more Texas schools, like a Baylor and a TCU or something like that. I don't see them grabbing Iowa State. That would surprise me. Although it's really not that far from Missouri, so it would make sense for Missouri. The Kansas schools, that's probably the biggest stretch. Maybe UCF. another Florida brand. Listen, I think UCF is a sleeping giant. I really do. Their brand is growing leaps and bounds. Gus Malzahn has the UCF football machine humming right now. They have the largest on campus student body right now. They're right there in Orlando. They're in a hotbed of recruiting, and oh yeah, they're right beside Disney, and they actually get funding from Disney. So it would not surprise me to see UCF blow up while being in the Big 12, and then the SEC watch, after UCF matures and the brand gets even more valuable, then they grab UCF. So I think UCF would be high on the list. So we're looking at Oregon State, West Virginia, UCF. I can't see them getting Cincinnati. I'm trying to stay east side of the Big 12, but I just can't see them getting Cincinnati. So maybe TCU would fit pretty good, or Baylor. I would say either TCU or Baylor, another Texas school. And there's some decent brands. Or maybe the SEC would be like, no, we don't want any brands on the Big 12. We're actually going to wait on the ACC, and then maybe we double down and catch up with you guys that way. They get 8 and the Big 10 gets 4. I don't know, but I could definitely see the Big 10 grabbing Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal. Oregon and Washington because of the football brand, and they have good academics too. I'm not slamming Washington and Oregon's academics. They have good academics, really good. But compared to Stanford and Cal, it's nothing. So you're getting the football brands with Washington, Oregon, and you're getting the academic brands with Stanford and Cal. And I think that would effectively end the Pac-12. I really do. Do I see that happening? Not all at once. I could see it happening in phases. I think they would get Oregon and Washington first, and then later on get Stanford and Cal. So eventually, yeah, I could see the Big Ten grabbing all 4 of those. It would make a lot of sense. The game changer move was grabbing USC and UCLA. Nobody ever thought that the Big Ten would stretch that far west and grab teams, in California. So that's the move that changed everything. Once that move happened, everybody was like, well, anything can happen now. So, yeah. I would say Stanford and Cal would be a big-time commodity for the Big Ten, especially travel for USC and UCLA. Yes, and I am going to do a video on the situation at ESPN. It seems like ESPN is in a financial crisis of sorts. I don't know how bad it is, but I do know that there are going to be some people that will be fired. I've even heard that Stephen A. Smith could be on the chopping block. From what I'm hearing, nobody is safe. Nobody is safe. How far west have I traveled? The farthest west that I've traveled is Colorado. That is Denver, Colorado. That's the farthest west. I've never been west of Denver. But my plan is, whenever this channel gets bigger and I'm able to afford traveling, what I want to do is I literally want to take this show on the road. I want to go to as many college football games and take in as many venues as possible, tailgate as many spots as possible. I want to go to the Arizona desert. I want to go to the California West Coast. I want to go to the forests of Oregon and Washington. I want to see that Husky Stadium right off the lake. I want to see all of it. I want to see as much of the college football part of the United States as possible. I want to see as many stadiums as possible. So that is my long-term plan. But I have to get this channel to where it's making decent money, to where I can literally travel like that. And yes, I would get an RV and I would build some type of display for the mini helmets. No matter what I do, the mini helmets are going to are coming with me. Joey said, look at Sonny V's comment. Sonny V says he sent the helmet. Which one? Oh, the Texas one. Okay, so you sent the Texas one. Was that another one, or was that the one you already sent? Because because I think you know what? If I didn't shout you out for that, I definitely apologize. I thought I did shout you out, but yeah, that's been a while since I got the Texas one. Was there another one, Joey, that you were telling me to look at? Because that's the only one I really see. Let's see. Give me 1 second. It says Longhorns. Let me go before that real quick. There was the ESPN. Sonny V says, I doubt Disney is funding much of anything anymore. And it's because of ESPN. Yes. Yes. That is true. And people are about to be fired. Joe, if I missed it, please put it back in the comments because I'm not seeing it. But anyways, I have been west of the Mississippi. Denver is way west of the Mississippi. I've been to Denver. We went to a trip out there in the Rockies, and it was pretty fun. But that's the farthest west I've been. Okay, Jerry, I see what you're saying. Anyways, yeah, and it's the cool thing is, we all get in this bubble where we're used to where we're at. We're used to how the terrain is. We're used to how the people are, and we don't realize that there's a world outside of this bubble that's completely different. And it's in this. You don't have to go to a different country. So my trip to Colorado, I was like, man, this is so different. Am I sure I'm in the same country? So that's what I want to do. Whenever this channel gets big enough to where it can support me traveling venue to venue, and I can afford to go to all these venues and to all these games and experience, all these traditions and tailgating and all that stuff, that's going to be awesome. And I want to go to as many as possible, and nothing's off limits. I'm not just talking about West. I want to go down to Coral Gables and see a Miami game in that new stadium. They're building a new stadium. I want to go to that new stadium and see that. Dan Davis says, so you never been anywhere near the West, and yet you got all the knowledge on GBD. What does that mean? What? So you can't talk about anywhere that you haven't been as far as college football related? I'm not talking about, how the people are or what the tailgating is like or how nice the stadium is. I'm not talking about something where I haven't been, where I'm trying to make a comment of an experience that I've never been to. I'm talking about freaking college football, so that comment doesn't make sense. Holy crap. This is not a super chat, but I have got to put that up there. What do you think, Joey? Look at that comment on the screen, Joey. I like it. Bonehead said, where's the Get It Gang convention? I like it. I like it. We might have to schedule a meeting of all the. I mean, you don't have to be somebody that's come up with a video idea and the Get It Gang. If you're just a simple subscriber, we might have to come up with a meeting spot and have a convention of sorts. That would be pretty cool. I like Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Joey, we do have to keep in mind we have subscribers across the country, so we would, if we do something like that, we would need the location to be as decent as possible. Not saying I don't like Gatlinburg, Tennessee, because I love Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and that would be awesome to do it in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. So that's a great idea, Bonehead. Like you might have just come up on something really, really cool. And I'm not talking about a one-time thing. Like this could be, a couple times or once a year or, whatever, once every 5 years. That would be really cool. And on top, and this is the cool thing about this comment by Bonehead is it kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about me traveling United States and going to as many games as possible. Okay. So the venue itself could change as well. So one year it could be in Gatlinburg. We all meet, whoever can come, we all meet in Gatlinburg and have a convention. The next year it could be in Austin, Texas, something like that. The next year, Chicago, Illinois. The next year, Salt Lake City. The next year, Seattle. The next year, San Francisco. I mean, all over the country. That way I can go regional, because I know all my subs aren't in just one area. I do know that most of my subs, are in the eastern side of the United States because that's where most of the population is. And that actually goes into the argument of why some of these teams, specifically the Four Corners, even Oregon and Washington, should join the Big 12, jumping out of the Pac-12 into the Big 12 because they would get more exposure. So making more money because we're hearing that the deal that they were offered, I'm hearing conflicting arguments, but the deal that I'm hearing the most is ESPN did have a deal, was a part of a deal that was on the table, $280 million for 10 teams. That's $28 million per team per year, not counting SMU and San Diego State. Very important to understand that. Very important to understand that. Okay. Cindy says Joe Buck and Troy Aikman getting fired. I didn't know that. Wow, that tells you something right there. Yeah, Vegas would be cool as well. A lot of great potential out there as far as landing spots for the convention. Bodan, you might be onto something amazing that I hadn't even considered. That is awesome. Now we can't do it this year, but I'm thinking, we might be in a situation this time next year to where we could do something like that because in the off season, this is supposed to be like the down month for college football sports YouTubers, and the last month was the best month we've had since September. This month will be our best month since July. And those are our boom months, okay? We should not be having this good of a month. So if we can keep this momentum going and keep doing this consistently, and not gonna lie, we can't do it without your support, without your views, without your likes, without your super chats. This is a team effort, but Golden Blue Dude has really grown even in the off season, even in the down months. So I have high expectations. I think this time next year, we could be planning some type of preseason. I want it to be a preseason convention. How about that? I don't want it to be, during the season because that just gets hectic with college football season. I don't want it to be right after the season because, that would be cool. But I want it to be at the hype of the year when everybody's looking forward to college football the most. Everybody's in the trash talk mood the most. Everybody's ready, let's get this thing going the most. So I'm thinking like maybe early August or late July, something like that. It's nice and warm outside. Yeah, I think this time next year we'll be able to plan something like that. So Sonny V says week 0. I like it, and that's really not a bad name for the convention either. Week 0. I like it. So it looks like another great idea hatched out by not me, but my subscribers. That's what I'm telling you. I rely on you for a lot of content and a lot of ideas. This is a team effort. We're growing because we're working together. Awesome stuff. But for the Pac-12, the deal that I'm hearing is $28 million, and that's just with 10 teams because it's $280 million total. So, at that rate, would they even bring SMU and San Diego State? Because these teams would have to take another cut to bring those two in, and then you could be looking at 25 or 24 million a year. So it's just not looking good. I know the one source that says he knows sources in Utah saying that the deal is looking to be around 380, and then they're chipping in $5 million apiece. So it's going to go down to 33 million. And then San Diego State, SMU, they're going to make 25 million. I don't know about that. That doesn't seem. I don't know. That doesn't match up with what everybody else is saying, and it doesn't match up with the situation that ESPN is going through, and the news that ESPN and the Pac-12 not even close to having a deal. Cindy says that was not news. That was a question. I don't know. Yeah, they could fire Buck and Aikman. That's possible. I thought you were saying they were fired. So, Anyways. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. I gotta do the whole school routine again. Appreciate everybody that stopped by. I'm telling you, these live shows, a great turnout, guys. It used to be rare for Golden Blue to get 100 people watching at any given time. Now it seems like every single live show we hit at least 100 million. Not 100 million. 100 people watching at any given time. We got up to 120 today. That's a good show as usual. Appreciate you guys coming out and supporting Golden Blue, watching the live show. Make sure to hit the like button on the way out. Even if you're not watching this live and you're watching a replay, please hit the like button. That's how these videos get the views. Shout out to everybody that has already hit the like button and that will hit the like button and that has commented in the comment section, because you guys really keep the engine going. And shout out to all the people with the super chat. Those donations, I'm telling you, especially in the off season, those donations are greatly appreciated. So hopefully you enjoyed yourselves, because I enjoyed myself. But as of right now, I believe it's Tuesday. Golden Blue Dude is out.